So, welcome to the hydrologic cycle review based on the formative assessment that you guys took last week. There were some things that we really did need to highlight. Your job is to take notes as you listen to this video. You can either do it electronically, and that link is in Google Classroom, or I do have some paper copies if you would prefer paper copies. So, we're going to talk about the hydrologic cycle. Our test is coming up in a couple days. So some things we need to talk about is evaporation. You all know that evaporation is changing from a liquid to a gas because we talked about phase changes in states of matter earlier. Um, you know that we have to add energy to that. We have to make it hotter in order for it to change from a liquid to a gas. And for the water cycle, that energy is usually the sun coming out. I mean, the sun is what drives the water cycle. When it is a hot summer day, there is more evaporation than when there is a cloudy day in the summer. There's more evaporation on a summer day because the air is hotter than on a cold winter day. Um, Evaporation, the snow melts and it evaporates more quickly when the sun is out than when the sun is not out. So that heat from the sun, that heat during the summertime versus the wintertime, helps evaporation happen faster. And we also know when we studied the states of matter that when molecules get hotter, they move faster. Um, so when we talk about evaporation, you need to understand that it's moving from a liquid to a gas. You need to understand the molecule movement, and you need to understand that we're adding energy or making it hotter. Okay? Condensation is actually the opposite of evaporation. So for this, we're going to do a phase change is going from a gas to a liquid. Okay, so we're taking the water vapor that you can't see in the air and we're turning it into a liquid water. So that's the opposite of evaporation. The molecule movement, because we're going from a gas to a liquid, it slows down, and the energy is it gets colder. So when something gets colder, we talked about in terms of science, we talk about that the energy is released. We don't add energy, we take energy away, and when we take energy away, that's when something gets cold. So it's the absence of energy. So evaporation and condensation are opposite. So when I do my memorizing, I memorize one of them, and evaporation is the first one I learned when I was a kid. So I memorized all those phase change and molecule movements and energy and the definition and the thought and the idea and the picture in my head. I had that memorized, and then I didn't memorize all those ideas about condensation. I just remember that condensation is the opposite. So you do what you need to do to remember both of those. Transpiration, this is new this year. Transpiration is when water vapor is lost um, through the pores in the leaves. And those pores are called stomata. So if you take a look at the picture, I really liked it. The roots that are in the ground absorb the water that's in the ground, the moisture that's in the ground, and that travels up the to the plant, and the plant uses that through photosynthesis. And through photosynthesis, not only does it use the water, but part of the waste through photosynthesis is water vapor. And that water vapor comes out of those pores called stomata. So this is transpiration, PIR, not transportation. Okay, transpiration. So this is part of the water cycle, and I just remember that that's connected to plants. Okay. So two ways water vapor gets into our atmosphere is through transpiration and evaporation. All right, precipitation. It is anything that's falling from the sky, right? Um, any form of water that falls from the clouds, and that could be rain, sleet, snow, hail, anything that's coming from those clouds. So after condensation happens, The water droplets get so heavy in the clouds that they fall as precipitation. So precipitation, make sure you understand what that is. It's pretty easy. We learned it when we were in elementary school. But if you take a look at this picture, so when precipitation falls, it can fall back into the ocean. It can fall into a lake, a pond, a river, a stream. It can fall on top of vegetation and trees and grass. And when it does, or it can fall on bare ground. And when it does do that, depending on how fast the precipitation hits the ground, some of it's going to be absorbed if it's a slow, steady rain, and if we haven't had rain for a while, it will be absorbed into the groundwater, and that absorption is called infiltration, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Sometimes, if the ground is already saturated, or maybe the precipitation is coming down too fast and there's not enough time for the ground to absorb it, it will run across the surface of the earth and the vegetation into the next body of water, and that's called runoff. So we'll take a look at that too, precipitation. So runoff, if you take a look at the mountain in the green part of it, that's the surface. The brown part is the underground part. So the green part is just showing you that runoff could be precipitation that falls from the clouds. It could be the snow melt at the top of the mountain there. But it is the water that doesn't get absorbed into the ground, but the water that just runs across the surface of the earth. Maybe the soil is too dense. Maybe it is already saturated. Maybe the water is too much at one time and it can't absorb fast enough. So runoff, a new idea. Kind of makes sense, runoff. Okay. Infiltration. So I picked this picture because we've got some infiltration into the soil there on the left side. So again, if it's raining slow enough and steady enough, the rain can be absorbed into the ground. If the ground is not already saturated with water, the ground can soak it up. If the soil is not too dense and it allows the water to enter into it, then it will infiltrate. Sometimes people will say percolate. Sometimes people will say water absorbs. The official word is infiltration. Okay, so this is a new idea also. We're also going to need to kind of think about the Earth spheres, and we talked about this, gosh, a long time ago, it seems like. Earth spheres, so we have the hydrosphere. Hydro means water. So this is all the water on Earth and in Earth. Lithosphere or geosphere, that is the actual dirt and soil and ground. Atmosphere is the layer of gases that surrounds the entire Earth. And biosphere, bio means life, so it's anything that has life. And those interact with each other in all kinds of ways. And we've looked at examples before, and we've had all kinds of things that we've talked about. And there'll be some questions on the test too. So I need to make sure that you refresh your memory on those. Okay, so that is the review. Your job is to make sure, if you need to listen to this again, then you listen to it again. The actual act of taking notes helps your brain remember and process. Maybe you just need to play this over and over and over again and listen to it, on the bus, on the way home, on the way back to school. You need to set up a system that's going to help you learn and remember this information for a test, and to be able to use it down the line too, not to just forget it once we take the test.